Shalom Yeladim. Let's learn the Parsha. The Parsha of the week is Re'eh, Re'eh, Re'eh. The Parsha of the week is Re'eh, Re'eh. Your turn. The Parsha of the week is Re'eh, Re'eh, Re'eh. The Parsha of the week is Re'eh, Re'eh. Well, you know that the name Re'eh comes from the word Ra'ah. What is it? Resh, Aleph, Hey, Ra'ah. Ra'ah means to see. When you see something, you are Ro'eh or Ro'ah. Well, in Sefer Devarim, we see many mitzvot that we already saw in the rest of the Torah. But Moshe Rabbeinu repeats all those mitzvot for us so we know them really, really well. So that when the Bnei Yisrael go into Eretz Yisrael, they will remember all the mitzvot they need to know. In this week's Parsha, the Parsha talks about keeping kosher. Do you remember, Yeladim, the different signs that the animals and the fish must have so we can eat them? Why do you think Hashem wants us to eat kosher animals? First, the number one reason for doing any mitzvah is because Hashem told us to. When Hashem gives us a mitzvah, we know that Hashem loves us, and there must be a good reason. And even if we don't know the reason, because Hashem told us, we trust Him that it's going to be good for us. But we also know that the animals that Hashem allows us to eat are not animals that eat other animals. They are not animals that go hunting. They are animals that eat from the grass and the things that grow in the ground. These animals have wonderful midot. They are good to each other. They are kind to each other. They take care of each other. And they don't hurt other animals. Why is that important, Yeladim? Well, because everything that we eat becomes a part of us. Whatever we eat becomes a little bit of our blood, becomes a little bit of our bones, makes us healthy and strong. But not only does it feed our goof, it also feeds our neshama. And we want only midos tovos to be part of our neshama. So the animals that we eat are animals that have midot tovot. And that helps us to be strong and to be healthy, but also to have midot tovot. What are the signs of a kosher animal? Well, there are two. First, the animal must chew its cud. What does that mean? It means that when you see a kosher animal, his mouth or her mouth will always be moving. Why? Because whatever it eats goes into their tummy, and it does not only have one tummy. Some animals have 3 tummies. Their food goes into one and comes back up to chew. Then goes down to another and comes back to chew. And goes down to another and comes back to chew. And finally, it goes out of their body when they're finished with digestion. When it's finished making them strong. That's one sign. Chewing their cud. The cud is the food that goes up and down and up and down. The other sign is split hooves. Not like a hoof of a horse, which is all the way across and no split in the middle. A split like in a cow or a goat or a deer. A kosher animal must have 2 signs. If it only has 1 sign, it is not kosher. Do you know which animal has 1 sign and shows off all the time and says, "Look at me"? It's the chazir. It's the pig. The pig has split hooves, but it doesn't chew its cud. Every time it's playing around, it lays down on its back and it shows his hooves high in the sky and says, "Look at me, I'm a kosher animal." But we know better. It only has split hooves and it doesn't chew its cud. So a chazir is not kosher. How about a bear? Is a bear kosher? It does not chew its cud, and it does not have split hooves. How about a lion? Is a lion kosher? No. A zebra? No. How about a cow? Is a cow kosher? Yes, Yiladim. It has split hooves and it chews its cud. What about a lamb? Does a lamb have split hooves? Yes. Does a lamb chew its cud? Yes. How about a deer? A deer has split hooves and chew its cud. So a deer is kosher. Those are some of the animals that are kosher for us to eat. Now let's think about the fish. What does a fish have to show us that it is kosher? There are 2 signs. The fish must have scales. Scales look like little nails that are all along the skin of the fish. And it also must have fins on the side. Which fish do you know have fins and scales? Well, what are those sandwiches that your imam makes all the time? Tuna. Tuna is kosher. Or trout, which has beautiful colors. It has fins and scales. And what about that pink, delicious fish called salmon? Yes, salmon has fins and scales. Those are some of the kosher fish that we see all the time. But there are many. There are northern and walleye and bass, many different fish that have fins and scales. What happens, Yiladim, if there's only 1 sign? What happens if there are only fins and no scales? Is the fish kosher? No. A fish must have both signs. In the Torah also tells us a very long list of birds that we may not eat and that are not kosher. If our bird or our fowl, our poultry, is not in that list, then we know that it is kosher to eat. Can you think of some of those birds or poultry? Well, we make soup from it for Shabbat. Chicken. Chicken is kosher. Turkey for Thanksgiving is kosher. How about duck? Some people eat that on Hanukkah because it's so very greasy. is kosher. The Torah tells us which birds we may not eat, and that is how we know which one we may eat. Do you remember the kosher song? Let's sing it together. All the animals that we eat must chew its cud and have split feet. Kosher meat just can't be beat. I love eating kosher. Your turn. All the animals that we eat must chew their cud and have split feet. Kosher meat just can't be beat. I love eating kosher. So every time you're in the market, only eat food with a kosher sign on it. It's good for me and it's good for you. And Hashem, He loves it too. Your turn. So every time you're in the market, only eat food with a kosher sign on it. It's good for me and it's good for you. And Hashem, He loves it too. Tuna, trout, and salmon too are also kosher for me and you. Fins and scales the fish must have because the Torah tells us so. Your turn. Tuna, trout, and salmon too are also kosher for me and you. Fins and scales the fish must show because the Torah tells us so. So every time you're in the market, only eat food with a kosher sign on it. It's good for me and it's good for you. And Hashem, He loves it too. From the beginning, all the animals that we eat must chew their cud and have split feet. Kosher meat just can't be beat. I love eating kosher. So every time you're in the market, only eat food with a kosher sign on it. It's good for me and it's good for you. And Hashem, He loves it too. Tuna, trout, and salmon too are also kosher for me and you. Fins and scales, they must show because the Torah tells us so. So every time you're in the market, only eat food with a kosher sign on it. It's good for me and it's good for you. And Hashem, He loves it too. That's wonderful, Yiladim. Every time, before you eat something, make sure it has a kosher sign on it, and you will be doing a wonderful mitzvah. See you soon, Yiladim.